Bonjour, la ministre Marie va faire...
Good morning. Minister Marie will be carrying out a very brief announcement, and then questions will be put through.
Ministre, la parole est à vous.
Everyone, c'est merveilleux d'être ici à Montréal.
How lovely to be here in Montreal for the UN conference on biodiversity of 2022.
Coastal territory of the Ganaya and Gahaga Nation, and historically a known place for gathering for First Nations. The work of protecting oceans is complex and challenging, which is why meetings like this are so important. They give us an opportunity to gather and to learn, to share and chart a course towards the protection of nature and the oceans. Et bien que les priorités, les actions discutées ici
Priorities discussed here are of critical importance and indeed become very significant thanks to the concretization of the collaboration, including that of the indigenous people who are the first guardians of the territory, the land and the waters.
Acknowledged this last week when he stood shoulder to shoulder with chiefs from right across Canada to announce $800 million to support Indigenous-led conservation initiatives to protect up to 1 million square kilometers of land and waters. It's through initiatives like this that we turn discussions into results and recognize the true value of the life Canada's lands and oceans sustain. So speaking of oceans, oceans cover more than 70% of the world's surface and are an average of 3.7 kilometers deep. With the longest coastline of any other country in the world, Canada's oceans are home to unique ecosystems and a wealth of both biomass and biodiversity. Mais nos océans se sont réchauffés,
But now more than ever, what with the acidity and the climate change around, all this is due to the human-induced activities and
areas and in deep offshore waters alike. Of course, these changes are also impacting people. Les peuples autochtones et les Canadiens
the indigenous people and the Canadians have been maintaining very close links to the oceans. We are counting on the marine environment for our nourishment, for the jobs, employment, transport, and even entertainment and recreation activities.
and protecting the biodiversity of the oceans is so very important. The federal government is committed to improving our collective understanding of the risks that climate change poses to our marine ecosystems, our coastal communities and fisheries, as well as marine safety. Oceans have a very critical role to play in order to reverse the damage we are doing to the environment. To quote the United Nations, oceans are the world's greatest ally in the fight against climate change. They are the world's largest carbon sink, and oceans play a key role in mitigating the impacts of global greenhouse gas emissions and stabilizing our climate. We're gathered in Montreal by common cause. We care about biodiversity, we care about climate change, and we care about our oceans. So I'm here to share with you some news that shows Canada isn't just talking about ocean biodiversity, we are taking action. In the last 7 years, we've gone from protecting just 0.9% of our waters to nearly 15% today. And we're not stopping there. We have ambitious targets for marine conservation. We aim to reach 25% by 2025 and 30% by 2030. This is, of course, in line with us joining the United Kingdom's Global Ocean Alliance in 2022. Today, I'm announcing our government is providing almost $230 million over 5 years to support aquatic restoration, conservation, and research activities across Canada. Aujourd'hui, je suis fière d'annoncer
Today, I'm very proud to announce that our government will be making available more than $230 million over the next 5 years to support activities for restoration, conservation, and research throughout Canada.
will allow us to advance outreach, monitoring, stewardship, capacity building initiatives with partners right across the country. This includes working with several Indigenous communities on projects to enable Indigenous leadership and collaboration in marine conservation. For example, it will help marine stakeholders better understand, map, and monitor coastal blue carbon habitats in Newfoundland and Labrador. We'll also fund science-based activities and research projects to support the development of monitoring tools and guidance to help better understand how marine conservation areas are affected by changes to the environment. The new funding will also support community-based projects to conserve and restore priority coastal and upstream areas by addressing human impacts to these environments. By bringing together Indigenous partners, conservation groups, community organizations, and people who use the water for work and leisure, we will be helping to encourage local capacity to support aquatic habitat prevention of damage, as well as restoration and revitalization. So on another front, our government is also taking action in other ways to protect biodiversity in the oceans and waters. And earlier today, we announced the coming into force of new regulations that end the use of single-use plastics. Yes. Starting this month, importing or manufacturing plastic bags, cutlery, or straws will no longer be allowed. This will eliminate 1.3 million tons of hard-to-recycle plastic waste over the next decade. Just picture that. That's equivalent to more than 1 million full bags of plastic garbage. Cela fait partie du Plan global du Canada, qui vise à réduire.
This is part of the global project of Canada to reduce plastic waste and progress towards a future without plastic waste. Our approach aims at bringing Canada up from what was a linear economy in plastic to an economy that is more circular and which maintains plastic within the economy but outside the environment. It is of urgency that everybody joins forces in putting an end and even revert the loss of biodiversity in the world and everywhere. This is something we should be doing and focus on.
Living in coastal communities in Canada and around the world, we can't compromise for marine life and species of all kinds that call the oceans their home. And we can't compromise for the health and sustainability of the oceans, recognizing the key role they play in regulating climate, being habitat for biodiversity, and providing food, nutrition, and employment for human beings. So for future generations who need us now more than ever to take real action on biodiversity loss and climate change, we are doing just that. It's wonderful to join with you here at COP15, gathered together with the common goal of taking action to protect nature. And I hope to see many of you in Vancouver next February for our Impact 5 conference. Thank you. Merci.
Merci. Le ministre a 5 minutes pour questions. Alors, si vous avez des questions, votre nom et votre média. En question, un suivi. Minister has about 5 minutes for questions and answers. Please state your name and outlet for the record. We'll start with the lady in the blue.
Bonjour, Elisa Serre, Radio-Canada. I'm sorry, Minister Murray, do you speak French enough to answer in French, or I just go in English?
In English, please.
Sure. Can you can you explain a little bit more about the plastic thing you just announced? I just arrived really late, and I'd like some information about that.
Well, thank you. This is an announcement made by Minister Guilbeault earlier today. So this is the extension of an announcement that our government made in, I believe, 2018, when we headed up the G7 meeting, as well as Minister McKenna headed up the G7 Environment Ministers meeting, and we made commitments to reduce our plastic debris in the oceans and plastic garbage in landfills that get into the oceans. So this is now we have regulation preventing the manufacture and sale of certain single-use plastic products in Canada.
Un suivi? Non? Vas-y.
Me again. So my friend from east of the country are wondering how is this $230 million going to be split up between places in the country? So there's a lot of fishery and coastal line both sides of the country. So are you going to decide where the money goes exactly?
Well, those decisions are made in discussions with partners. I mean, much of this is about funding organizations to do some of this important work of monitoring, of collecting data, of doing the science and research. And so these are ongoing discussions that we have with organizations that have that expertise and that interest. And so we'll be providing more details over the days to come. Effectively, we as a government can't do this work ourselves. It is with the intentionality, the competence and partnership with others, including Indigenous communities, that we can protect Canadian biodiversity and protect our waters.
Dernière question, monsieur.
Thank you very much. David Zakas from the Planetary Health Weekly. You mentioned that we're en route to preserving 25% of our waters by 2025 and then 30% by 2030. But you also said that we're at 19% now. How does the Government of Canada intend to get to 2025, 25% in 3 years when we're still only at 19%?
By having a very clear goal and working very hard and doing this in partnership with Indigenous peoples. So that's what my observation is, that it's non-negotiable that we work together with Indigenous communities in our marine protected areas. It may seem that it takes longer at the front end, but it will be more effective and more effectively managed together in partnership with the Indigenous communities once they're actually mapped out. Well, we're working on the Northern Shelf bioregion, offshore Pacific. I mean, there's a number that are being worked on that are not at the point that they are yet being counted in. There is some up in the north. So this is not a standing start to get from 14 to 25 by 2025. There are a number in the works where the discussions are underway or well underway. So I'm confident, and hey, it's important to have goals, and it's important to have measurable goals, and that's the best way to actually make that progress. So I'm optimistic.
Thank you. That's all the time we have for questions today.
Thank you very much for your interest.